Now, this is what real oversight looks like. My favorite freshman, Brandon Gill, stepped into this hearing and immediately started pressing the Department of Defense on something they never want to talk about ever. Why they've never passed a full financial audit. We're not talking about rounding errors. We're talking about trillions of dollars, missing documentation, and a department that shrugs every single time somebody tries to hold them accountable. Year after year, nothing changes. Brandon Gill didn't show up to take notes. He showed up to make this uncomfortable. This is Andy with TreadingPolitics.com. Like and subscribe because these are the moments that actually matter and most people will never see.
Bill, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing. It's nice to be part of a bipartisan hearing where I think we can all agree on what our goals are here. And thank you to the witnesses as well for taking the time here. Mr. Mansfield, can you remind us what the Department of Defense's budget was in 2017?
It was $909 billion.
In 2017?
Oh, 2017, I don't know.
Okay, it was about $582 billion, roughly. Do you know what it was in 2024?
Last year was around
$910 billion. So it's a pretty substantial increase, is it not? That's a lot of money.
Sorry. Yes, I didn't have my mic on. I apologize.
And can you remind us if the DoD has ever passed an audit?
At the agency-wide level, no.
Got it. And how many audits has it had recently?
7 full-scale audits.
And how much do those cost?
So this year, the cost of audit is right around $211 million.
$211 million this year.
I think that's right. Yes,
So it's a lot of money. That's a pretty substantial audit, is it not?
it is.
Got it. And can you sort of walk us through some of the high-level reasons why the DoD hasn't been able to pass an audit?
Well, it goes back to what we've been talking about here. Systems is one of the main things, right? And then more importantly, you can have the best system in the world, but if the data that's within that system isn't accurate, reliable, and supported, the system doesn't matter. So it gets to the fundamentals of accounting and in just operationalizing good controls. So when you receive a shipment, you count how many things are in it, you validate that the cost of your charge is what you expected, you make sure you've got the right line of funding to pay for that, and then you make sure it's in your books in the appropriate place so you know where it's at and what the condition is. If those pieces are missing, the systems aren't going to matter. And then as Mr. Khan indicated, the other thing is the planning process for the department and the way it makes decisions. They're made piecemeal. They're made throughout the department individually for the good of the individual entity, not always with consideration for the overall DoD approach. And so I think that is one of the reasons why I have so many problems setting milestones and sticking with them is so many individuals making decisions for their own interest versus stepping back and saying, what's the best system for multiple entities using at the same time.
So you have a pretty good idea what needs to be done in order to pass an audit, at least at a high level. Can you help us understand why we haven't passed an audit recently?
But just lack of execution on the fundamentals is what I would say.
And who's held accountable for that? And what are the consequences whenever the DoD fails to pass an audit?
Well, the real consequence is lack of confidence for the taxpayer in the DoD's ability to account for and spend its money.
I agree, but within the DoD, for instance, is there somebody who gets fired, who gets demoted, who sees their bonuses decreased? Is there any actual action taken against any individual or group within the DoD for failing to pass an audit?
I can't speak to individual personnel actions, but I can say in recent years, the DoD has added, at least at the executive level, an element in the performance plans for their executives related to financial readiness, getting down to the ability to support individual transactions. So there's an accountability measure they have now. It's up to the department's management to use that effectively in order to spur change, though.
Right, but in other words, we're talking about a budget of hundreds of billions of dollars every single year that, and large portions of that are unaccounted for. We don't know where this money is going. This is taxing my constituents, all of our constituents here, hardworking Americans to keep our country safe, which again is something we all agree with, and we haven't seen anybody fired for what seems to be appears to be largely a total lack of accountability. We haven't seen any punitive measures against anybody in the DoD. Is that right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Got it. I think that as we're thinking about hundreds of billions of dollars that should be keeping the American people safe, the American people expect transparency, they expect accountability, they expect to know where their hard-earned tax dollars are going, and we've got to see some progress here. So thank you very much for your time.
Brandon Gill didn't ask anything complicated. He asked whether the Department of Defense can actually account for the money it's given. And the answer, once again, as always, is no. The Pentagon has never passed a full financial audit. They've tried, they've failed, and somehow this failure keeps getting funded and nobody's held accountable. Any other agency with a record like this would be gutted, defunded completely, but the Department of Defense always gets a blank check because nobody wants to be the one to question where the money's going in the Department of Defense, right? And if I couldn't pass an audit, there'd be serious consequences, just like you. But Gill comes prepared. He asked about results. He asked about timelines. How can an agency this big, this powerful, this resourced, how can they still not give Congress a straight answer? And instead of getting transparency, Gill's getting excuses. They say the department is too large to audit, too complex, too layered, too many systems, and that's why it matters. If it's too large to track, how can we possibly trust it? This isn't a partisan line. This is basic common sense 101. And there are defense contractors billing taxpayers for things they can't justify. There are budgets growing faster than inflation, faster than enrollment, faster than most Americans' ability to keep up with the nonsense. And all of this is wrapped up in the same excuse: national security. Every single time someone gets close to the numbers, they're just told to back off. But Gill's not going to. He's going to say what needs to be said, and that's what makes him different. And this isn't about slashing the military. Nobody wants that. It's about respecting the taxpayers who make the military possible in the first place. And if we want a strong defense, we need to know where our money's going. If we want readiness, we need accountability. None of that's going to happen if Congress keeps looking the other way. And Gill is not looking the other way. He's looking directly at the problem, and he's asking the one thing nobody wants to hear. When are we going to fix this? This is Andy with TrendingPolitics.com. Like and subscribe if you're ready to see more leaders ask real questions like this and demand real and better answers. This is what oversight should look and sound like, and it's just getting started because most politicians just talk about holding people accountable. But Gill showed up when the country really needs him, and he shows up with facts and with the spine. We need a lot more of this. This is why Gill is my favorite freshman congressman.